get this out of here. All right, I don't need this browser open. Don't need this open. Don't need that open. Don't need that. Oh, actually, I'll keep that. Okay, let me see here. I've noticed too that if I put my phone sideways here, it will give more of a wide screen type of thing. All right. Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Brother Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly, Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua Messiah. Today, obviously, as you see here, my mom's right next to me. We got Brother Yahusha. We got Sister Shoshana with us. We got Brother Dennis. And that's pretty much it. So we are going to be continuing the book of First Kings. My mom's going to start us off in chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're good to.
Yeah, no, I'm going to use this. I'm going to still use this for today. Yeah, okay. I'm good to finish it. Yeah, okay, it's not that long. Okay.
All right. Yeah, well, I think I'll have the ISR out just in case you have a question about wording.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be using my net Septuagint though.
Right. Yeah, I already want to look something up in the Septuagint after I get finished reading, but I'll tell you about that after. Okay.
Let me see here. Let me just get to the page here. First Friends. All right. So First Kings would be Third Kings. That's another thing, guys. If you're reading from a physical Septuagint, First Kings is Third Kings in the LXX. Just to let you know, if you have a physical Septuagint in hand. All right. There. All righty then. Chapter 3. All right.
Okay. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and the temple of Yahuwah and the wall around Jerusalem. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places because a temple had not yet been built for the name of Yahuwah. Solomon showed his love for Yahuwah by walking according to the statutes of his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burnt incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place. And Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar at Gibeon. Yahuwah appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream. And Yahuwah said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, "You have shown your kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, O Yahuwah, my Elohim, you have made your servant king in place of my father, David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" Yahuwah was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So Yahuwah said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon awoke and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of Yahuwah's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all his court. Okay. Now, two prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, my master, this woman and I live in the same house. I had a baby while she was there with me. The third day after my child was born, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There was no one in the house but the two of us. During the night, this woman's son died because she laid on him. So she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I, your servant, was asleep. She put him by her breast and put her dead son by my breast. The next morning, I got up to nurse my son, and he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning light, I saw that it wasn't the son I had born. The other woman said, no, the living one is my son, the dead one is yours. But the first one insisted, no, the dead one is yours, the living one is mine. And so they argued before the king. The king said, this one says my son is alive and your son is dead. Well, that one says, no, your son is dead and mine is alive. Then the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword for the king. He then gave an order. Cut the living child in two and give half to the one and half to the other. The woman whose son was alive was filled with compassion for her son and said to the king, please, my master, give her the living baby. Don't kill him. But the other said, neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in two. Then the king gave his ruling. Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother. When all Yashrael heard the verdict the king had given, they held the king in awe because they saw that he had wisdom from Yahuwah to administer justice.
The second woman is pretty stupid. She didn't have to say anything. She could have just kept her mouth shut. The other woman already said, like, give it to her. She didn't have to say. If she had just kept her mouth shut, she would have. But I bet you the people when Shalma said cut the baby in half, I bet I can only imagine what they were thinking.
Yeah, they probably were like, what in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, but the fact that the mother said give it to her rather than it being cut in half, it's showing the real mother would want the baby to live.
Right. That's right. You'd rather have somebody else have the child than have him die.
Yeah. Yeah. What I noticed is your version, Mom, calls them women, right? In general.
Prostitutes, and that was exactly what I wanted to look because I'm like, is that really what it says in all the different versions?
Mine says harlot, but yep. Go ahead, bro.
No, that's what I was gonna say. It says harlot.
Yeah, see, this is where the evangelical understanding comes in with the NIV. They like to I talked to Sister Marissa about this one time. We were talking on Telegram, and you got to be careful with these evangelical translations because they interpret a fornicator as a prostitute, when in actuality, you can be a fornicator without being a prostitute. A prostitute is someone who sells their body for money.
Yeah.
If you're fornicating without money, you're technically not a prostitute. You're just giving your body away for free, actually. So it's a different, like the Greek word is porne, fornication. Yeah, well, that's wrong, Mom.
Yeah, and that's
just because the English translation, the Septuagint says prostitute, doesn't mean they're right. That Lexham, I'll tell you right now, there's sometimes I don't like the Lexham at all because they are catering to Christian terminology half of the time. They don't look at the original Greek word.
Mm-hmm.
It says porneia, which is prostitution, not prostitution, fornication.
Mm-hmm.
Fornication does not mean you're a prostitute. It means you're fornicating. It means you're sexually immoral. It has nothing to do with being paid for sex. So it's not the same thing.
Okay.
And I really don't like these evangelical translations that do that. They try to equate a prostitute with a harlot. It's not the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
It says, see, this is the problems too, is the Strong's is still giving you a Christian understanding. This is the problem here. And again, James Strong was a Christian. So again, he doesn't understand the difference. He's not a Hebrew. He doesn't understand the difference. Porneia does not mean prostitute, though. Porne means fornication, means a fornicator. So really, if you want to translate it from the original Greek, it should have been read as there appeared to fornicators before the king, or to sexually immoral women. That's how it should actually be read, rather than prostitutes. I understand why the NIV does that, because they are an evangelical Bible. So I understand why they do that, because they've been taught, from the church that it's the same thing when it's not. Just like they're taught divorce and put away is the same thing.
Right.
There's many things in Christianity they have not been taught to distinguish. Ezekiel chapter 26. Okay, so that's the biggest problem, is they're not taught what is clean from unclean. They're not taught what is the distinction within the law of certain things. So they combine things. Anyway, so it seems like these were two sexually immoral women, probably had babies out of wedlock. They probably had bastard children. And that seems to be the context of the story. So you have these two mothers that would have had children without a father. And because, they probably, slept around and had a child, out of marriage, outside of marriage. And so now one of them, I think the context too, right, is one of them laid on the child that died. Probably the mother slept on top of the child, and the child suffocated.
Yeah.
So that would be the context of that. But another thing I thought was weird was the LXX doesn't have the part about the alliance. It seems like that detail was omitted in the LXX about him making an alliance with Pharaoh.
Oh, right.
I was like, when you start reading that, I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, that's not even there. So that was weird.
Check in the previous chapter, because it is in the Complete Apostles Bible.
Oh, I see what they did. That's part of that big paragraph from last time. Aha. So probably it's somewhere within here.
Yeah, it's towards the very end of it.
Let's see here.
246.1 or 246I.
Yeah, so right here, Solomon had 40,000 brood maries for his chariots, 12,000 horses, and he reigned over all the kings. The wars of Egypt, Solomon.
Oh, well, actually, it reads differently than the Masoretic, I guess.
Yeah, so there's no mention. I mean, there doesn't have to be a mention of it. He married the guy's daughter. Like, it's kind of implied. If you know anything about ancient cultures and alliances and treaties, it's kind of implied if you're marrying a daughter of the Pharaoh, you're by default you have a friendship with him.
Right.
Because the way that covenants worked back then is you were now going to be a friend of your father-in-law. Like you're marrying his daughter. It's kind of like
David and
well, not even that. Like remember, Mom, the Abraham when he had that covenant dinner with that guy. I'm trying to remember his name. It was either Jacob had it. I'm probably thinking of Jacob and Laban.
The only
Jacob
thing
and Laban. Yep, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll speak right after.
Oh, I was just going to say there's other instances in the Tanakh, especially in Genesis, where you got Laban and Jacob. You got, usually like if you're marrying into someone's family, there's going to be some type of treaty. There's going to be some type of covenant of peace between the two.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, the only thing is that in the Septuagint, he doesn't seem to take the daughter of Pharaoh until chapter 7.
Interesting.
It doesn't say anything about the daughter of Pharaoh in this part in chapter 3.
Interesting.
Or in chapter 2.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I guess the Masoretic felt the need to add that into chapter 3. I don't know why, because the rest of the chapter has nothing to do with it. I guess they felt the need to add that detail in verse 1. Yeah, so because the rest of the chapter has nothing to do with that, and it's so weird that it just out of nowhere talks about, oh, he made a covenant with Pharaoh. And let me see here if the Vulgate even has it. I wonder what affinity means.
An alliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Vulgate has it too. That's interesting. So if it was added in, it could have been added in as early as the time of Jerome. If it wasn't supposed to be originally there. Yeah, you would have, let's see, if Jerome is writing this in 300 AD. Yeah, somewhere. So if that was added to the text, it would have been added between 100 and 300 AD, roughly.
Is there an English Targum for First Kings?
I don't know about English. I know that the Safaria.org probably has it in some type of box script Hebrew. Let me see here. First Kings Targum. It would be under their prophets section if they did. Because I know that's how they separate it. They're let's see here. According to legend here, this is actually written by Jonathan ben Uziel rather than the pseudo Jonathan one. See, this is why I don't trust their datings, because they're trying to say it was composed between 150 BC and 350 AD. Why would it take like over 1,000 years to write one book? Doesn't make any sense. So they're I don't know. I think they're trying to make it look like the Targums are older than what they are as far as the written ones go. But yeah, it seems like it's all box script. So you would need to like put it through like some type of. I don't even know.
Oh no, this is only Jeremiah. Never mind.
Yeah, this is.
They have you can download an Aramaic Bible translated into English of the Targums on archive.org. or not download, but you can borrow it if you have an account.
Yeah, I would like to look into that because there's a lot of their books on Safari.org that are in box script. But yeah, I think it was definitely. It seems like it was added in. If the earliest version they have is from the Vulgate, that would only be first to third century at best. AD. So, according to Heiser, the Masoretic text, even the earliest source they would have had for the Masoretic text to compile it would have been what the Vulgate uses, according to Heiser. They supposedly there's some type of information he came across in the first century, 100 AD. They were starting to make new Hebrew versions and altering them. So he believes that the Masoretes, if they had a old Hebrew source, that's the oldest they could have gotten, was something from like the first century. And so if that's the case, it would make sense why the Vulgate is agreeing with the Masoretic there. So, because it just doesn't make any sense for it to be included in the chapter. It just doesn't. If it's already mentioned in chapter 7 to 8, they don't need to mention it again. I've seen this in times where the Masoretic already has something in another chapter of the book, and they almost like added in another chapter to restate something, or for some reason to, need it in multiple chapters. You okay, Mom?
Yeah, I just want to get this blanket off the bed.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that would be my assumption on this, is that it was added in. Unless people can find me like something from the Dead Sea Scrolls or something that like would be old enough to where it's close enough to the original Septuagint time period to where the only other like thing we could say is that these modern Septuagints, that someone took it out. That's the only other option. But I think in this case, it seems way more likely that these modern Hebrew copies in the first century were like they were starting to add things to the text for whatever reason. They were adding things to either restate them, or maybe they felt like it needed to be stated before chapter 7. Who knows? But I mean, that's the earliest one I can find that has that there. So let's see if they. You know what's weird is I've noticed these are places that the New Hard English Bible should be having a footnote for, and they don't. It's very weird. Hold on. Maybe I didn't have it selected, because there should be a note there, I would think. Let me see something. No, huh? Interesting. I would think they should be having a footnote there. Interesting. This is, I mean, usually a big difference like this, there should be a footnote. But anyway. Yeah, see, they have a footnote here. He lets you know that Adonai's there in the Hebrew. In verse 10. Hebrew manuscripts, so they went, I guess, with the Dead Sea Scrolls over the Masoretic, because they're saying that the Masoretic text reads lowercase Lord, which is, Adonai.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. They must have went with a earlier Hebrew in that verse. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. I wonder if the ABP has it all caps here. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So, you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Let's see. Interesting. So verse 12, according to this, says LXX, Targums, and Syriac. Masoretic text reads words, plural. Interesting.
I read words too.
So the word words is plural in the Masoretic, but it would be word in the Targum, Syriac, Peshitta, and the Septuagint. It's interesting. So I'm making a little note about that so I don't get my cross references screwed up next time. That's 1 Kings 3:12. Word singular. Now that's like one of the minor differences, but it's definitely a difference. So let's see here, verse 15. Then he arose. Interesting. I wonder if there's a difference between the BHS and the Masoretic text then. Because the BHS, I think, is based on the Biblica, Hebraica, Studa. I forget the last part. I can't pronounce the last part. The Studagracia or whatever. I think that's supposed to be based on the Aleppo Codex. Let's see here. So that'd be interesting if that is agreeing with the Septuagint over the Masoretic. That would definitely show that there's been tamperings in the Hebrew. Then you have a later Hebrew text that has a variance. So that's interesting. I'm going to have to write that down. So verse 15, he arose. Masoretic text lacks arose.
It's awoke.
Oh, yours has awoke, huh? Interesting. I might be going with the Septuagint because it's saying the Masoretic text lacks the whole word. So the NIV might be going with the Septuagint there. Also, it looks like an earlier Hebrew, the BHS, agrees with the Septuagint there. Let's see, the Ark of the Covenant. LXX reads, made a great feast. Huh. So the LXX differs there and says a great feast instead of just feast. There's a little bit of background noise here. Hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. Let's see here. Looks like Brother Dennis might have dropped out, or maybe he's on Sue's line now. So I just wanted to make a note there of that. So that's a difference there. Is there anything else? Nope, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we get though from this chapter, more importantly, is Solomon didn't ask for wealth, didn't ask for material things. He asked for wisdom, and Yahuwah gave those other things because he didn't ask for them.
That's right.
All right. Let me also write down here.
Humble heart.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now this is weird. The Masoretic also in verse 5 adds, I never noticed this before. They add the place Gibeon there to the text, which the Septuagint doesn't have Gibeon there. I'm wondering why they felt the need to say, in Gibeon, Yahuwah appeared to him. It's very weird. Like, I wonder what the significance would be of adding a geographical location to where Yahuwah appeared to him. I wonder.
Well, it was where he offered sacrifices too. It says that he went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices.
It's just why in verse 5 does it need to be reiterated where Yahuwah appeared to him? Because verse 4 already says Gibeon. You know what I'm saying? Like these Masoretes, they add in extra details that like it's indifferent to the story. That's why I believe verse 1 has been added as well with the whole Pharaoh, the treaty with Pharaoh and all that. You already find that out in chapter 7. So it's like why a lot of these things the Masoretes are like putting in there is like really non-essential things they're adding to the text. So it's very strange. Very, very strange. Verse 2, I think, is an actual important one as well, that the people were still sacrificing at the high places. Definitely. So you didn't have them really fully following Yahuwah. They were like serving him, but using the high places to offer sacrifices to Yahuwah. So you still had that Deuteronomy 12 issue. They were trying to worship Yahuwah like the nations worship their gods. So
I could be wrong about this, and correct me, please, if I'm not, but it kind of reminds me of what they're doing over there in Jerusalem right now. They don't have a temple. And from what I've heard, they're going and offering sacrifices to whatever is there. I'm not even sure what is there at this point, but it just kind of reminds me of that. They're not doing their desire is good, but we know that that's not the only thing that matters. It has to be the way he wants it. Yeah. And
I would say the common people, that's what it looks like. But when you look at the government that's there, Mom, they're not even intentionally trying to worship Yahuwah.
Oh, okay.
When you look at the religious leadership over there, there's been multiple of their rabbis at the Sanhedrin have admitted that they worship the devil.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
So they're not, it's not like this where you have people that are trying to worship the Most High.
Sure.
You have people like the Israel that's there today is the synagogue of Satan. That's what we need to understand.
Right. Oh,
so, So it's not exactly the same thing. It's, I would say the common people unknowingly, they think they're trying to worship the Most High, but the religious leadership there and the people that are in the know, they know who they worship, and it's not Yahuwah. So they've admitted it themselves. So not exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Similar, not exactly the same thing. Because actually, the pagans, that's what they're supposed to do. the high places belong to pagans.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Baal worshippers use the high places. That's why in Yahuwah said in Deuteronomy 12 not to do it like they do it. What we have over there today is Gentile pagans acting like they're Israelites. That's really what we have in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Even ethnically, they're born pagans. They're born out of covenant. And as far as the leadership goes over there, they're admitting they're pagan. They're admitting they worship the devil. So that's really what we have over there. It's almost like in Moses' day, this would be the equivalent of what's going on there right now. Is if you had a pagan nation take over the land of Israel and kick the Israelites out, and now they're running the land. That's the difference. So say like Babylon kicked them out, right, and took over the land of Canaan. That's what we have over there right now. That's essentially what you have over there. You have Gentile pagans running the land of Israel. Essentially, that's what I believe is happening over there.
To be trodden down by the Gentiles.
Yeah,
it's funny you said that. I was just about to say that.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's the prophecy that's being fulfilled. FYI, those out there that still want to believe in this 1948 fantasy. Okay, a nation wasn't born in one day. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. Okay, that 1947 is I would say the creation of the synagogue of Satan, if anything. What happened in 1947. Whether that hurts people's feelings, I'm sorry. I got to be blunt about it. That's what happened. Satan got his fake Israel in that land, and that's what happened. Yahuwah allowed it to happen because Daniel has to be fulfilled.
That's right.
You have to have the trodden down of the Gentiles. So Yahuwah has to allow Satan to do certain things to fulfill prophecy. Yahuwah, it's not that he's not in control. He's in control, but he has to allow the devil to do certain things.
Yeah, for sure.
So for his word to be confirmed and for his word not to fall short, he has to allow the devil to do certain things.
Right.
So that's why if you don't understand like Yahuwah's promises and you don't understand Yahuwah's character, that what he says must happen, he of himself doesn't even have power to stop prophecy from happening because he speaks it, it has to happen.
It has to happen.
He's not a liar. So he speaks it, has to happen. And so this is something that we're not taught about in the church, and we're not taught to understand Yahuwah's true character, and he doesn't lie ever. So if he says something's going to happen that way, it has to happen that exact way. It can't deviate from what he said beforehand.
Yeah.
So he says the Goyim will trample Jerusalem. They are trampling Jerusalem right now. He says that place where he was impaled will be called spiritually Sodom and Egypt. What do we have over there right now? We have spiritual Sodom and Egypt in Israel. It has to happen. So, but anyway, so just wanted to make that point because I know it gets confused. We kind of look at stuff like this and we try to compare it to that nation over there when they're not even the same people. They're not even the same lineage. They're basically Japhethites, Edomites that have fooled the whole world into thinking they're Israel. Essentially, that's what's going on there. You have like Rob Skiba put it best. You have the descendants of Esau wanting to get back at Jacob's descendants for what Jacob did to their ancestor. It's like the script has been flipped. So now they want to trick people into thinking they're Jacob when Jacob was commanded by his mother to make his father think that he was Esau. So that's really what's going on out there. So, but just to comment on what my mom was kind of commenting and asking about, the difference between the two. So I really think at this time in First Kings, though, you had Yahuwah's people that are in the land there. They're trying to worship him in their own way. So I would say this is compared to Deuteronomy 12, where Yahuwah says you don't do that. They were doing that. And even in the time of Jeroboam, as you get further on into the timeline of First and Second Kings, it gets worse and worse. It evolves from high places to golden calves, and it gets even worse and worse. Because Jeroboam supposedly was like, I think what was the tradition, Mom? He was like supposedly Hiram's soldier or something like that. He was one of Hiram's men that was building the temple, and he basically he was a good masoner and builder, but as a Israelite, practicing Israelite, he wasn't that righteous, Jeroboam.
No, not at all.
So that's what happens when he becomes king. You got a guy that really doesn't really know the Torah all that well, and you now have him as king. When according to Scripture, your king is supposed to know the Torah back and forth. It even says, for whoever you pick as king, study the Torah. So you got to realize too, this is the beginning of the decline of Israel, is what we're reading right now. Oh yeah, definitely. So you're going to start seeing them worshiping Yahuwah on high places, doing this, doing that, and many of the kings later on, it will say they did this, they did that, but they did not get rid of the high places. They did not get rid of the high places. That was the biggest problem. Israel's biggest problem always has been, we want to worship Yahuwah the way we want. We always go by the error of Cain for some reason. And that's always been our problem. That's always been our stumbling block. We think we can do everything in our own way. That's always been our problem. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to expound this to death here, but I just wanted to talk about certain really important parts of this chapter here. So, all right. So let's see here what we got. Chapter 4 now. Okay, let me see here. All right, let me see here. So chapter 4 is a little bit more lengthy. And there's it looks like, okay, even though that, okay, so the Septuagint does have a little bit of extra about the daughter of Pharaoh here, so maybe this is what's going on here. So we're at least going to get the first instance of him marrying Pharaoh's daughter here in chapter 4, towards the end of the chapter. So let's see here. Okay, so let's see here. No. And King Solomon reigned over Yasharel, and these are the princes which he had: Azariah, son of Zadok, Eliaph, and Achiah, son of Seba, scribes, Jehoshaphat, son of Ahihud, recorder, Benaiah, son of Yoadai, over the army, Zadok and Abiathar, priests, Orniah, son of Nathan, was over the officers, Zabuf, son of Nathan, the king's friend, Ahisar was steward, Eliak, steward, Eliab, son of Saph, was over the family, Adoniram, the son of Ayudan, over the tribute. And Solomon had 12 officers over all Yasharel to provide for the king and his household. Each one's turn came to supply for a month in the year. These the names: Ben, the son of in, I wonder if that's her there.
Mine
Son of
says
her.
Ben-Hur.
So Ben-Hur. In the Mount Ephraim one, son of Dakar, in Makes, and in Salabim, Beth-Shemesh, and Alon, as far as Bethanan one. Son of Azdi in Araboth, his was Soko, and all the land of Ophir, or Ophir, and Nethador belonged, the son of Aminadab. Hephah, daughter of Solomon, was his wife. Banah, son of Ahiluth, had Ethanach and Megiddo, and his was the whole house of San, which is by Sesathan, below Ezra, and from Bethsan as far as Sabal Mula, as far as Maber Lukam, 1. The son of Neber and Raboth Gilead, to him fell the lot of the son of Neber in Raboth Gilead, to him the lot of Ergob in Bashan, 60 great cities with walls, brazen bars, 1. Ahinadab, son of Sadu, Mananaim, Achimas in Nephthalim, and he took Basemath, daughter of Solomon, to wife, 1. Baana, son of Kusi in Asher, and Baaloth, 1. Jehoshaphat, son of Fusad, was in Issachar. Shimei, son of Elah, in Benjamin. Gaber, son of Adai, in the land of Gilead, in the land of Gad, the land of Sion, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, and 1 officer in the land of Yehuda. That'll be an interesting verse to go back to. Just want to make a note of that, because that goes back to the allotments and all that. And Gad was given part of the land of Sihon. Gad was given Sihon's land. By the way, just to give you a refreshment there, Sihon, he was the king of the Amorites they killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was that Nephilim giant they killed. These were the requisite supplies. And by the way, I'm jumping down to verse 22, guys, because 20 and 21 is omitted. So these were requisite supplies for Solomon in 1 day: 30 measures of fine flour, 60 measures of pounded meal, 10 choice calves, 20 pasture oxen, 100 sheep besides stags. Now, stags are deer, right?
Yes.
Choice fatted does. Now, does would be what, a dove?
A doe is like I think a female deer.
A female deer.
Female deer. Yeah. Yep.
For he had dominion on his side, the river, on this side of the river, and he was at peace on all sides around about. Okay, 25, 26 omitted. And thus officers provided King Solomon, they, everyone in his month, all the orders for the table of the king, they omitted nothing. Okay, Mom. I just got it for a short intermission, Mom.
Sure.
Can you pick it up?
What verse did you start on?
Verse 28.
28. Okay, sure.
Oh.
Okay. They also brought to the proper place their quotas of barley and straw for the chariot horses and the other horses. Yahuwah gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the men of the East, and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than any other man, including Ethan the Ezrahite, wiser than Haman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He described plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He also taught about animals and birds, reptiles, and fish. Men of all nations came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom.
That's a big difference from the Masoretic reads his songs were 1,005. The Septuagint reads his songs were 5,000.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Wonder what happened to all his parables and songs.
Yeah, right. Maybe the Mezerites didn't like Solomon too much. Maybe they wanted to make his achievements look less.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I wonder if a lot of things got destroyed. Like, we wonder where a lot of writings went to. But I wonder if just some things just don't. I mean, definitely some things could be stored up in the Vatican, but I bet you a lot of things got destroyed when they went into captivity.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah.
It seems as if there's definitely the early reign of Solomon is almost like a millennial type, a shadow of what comes in the millennial. You have like peace in the land, and you have all these nations coming to Jerusalem and coming to him to seek Hakma, and nobody's at war with Yatron.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true.
So,
I'm just wondering if mine, this is a very minuscule kind of thing, but since we have a minute, I'm wondering if mine has a typo. If anybody else has a Masoretic in front of them. Mine at the beginning of chapter 4 says, and these were his chief officials, Azariah, son of Zadok, the priest.
no, that's right.
Then it goes down and it says in verse 5, Azariah, son of Nathan. Did they both have a son named Azariah?
Probably.
Okay.
Azariah is a very
all right. I just thought it was funny. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're in the Hebrew culture, like names are ancestral, so they become like repetitive and stuff like that. That's why Yahusha, even Yahusha's name, like 4 or 5 people
pretty
with the
common.
same name.
Yeah, true.
It's more to Yahuwah, the reason names are given, it's more or less a meaning or a message behind them.
Right.
So, John, I'm pretty sure there's other Johns out there. I think there was even 2 Matthews in Scripture. I know the translations, they try to differentiate and say Matthias is his name, but look in the Hebrew, it would be the same. It would be Mattiyahu for 2 different people. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of their names are common. A lot of their names are common.
That's true. Okay.
Simon. I'm pretty sure there's multiple Simons or Shimeon in Scripture. Trying to think what else. Judas was originally his original name was Judah before they translated into Greek. So meaning he had the same name as the tribe of Judah, the ancestor Judah,
Right.
And Jude, the person, Jude, his real name was actually Judah. What happened was he got translated into Greek, and somehow they translated into English as Jude. But if you look at the Hebrew, it would have been the same name. So A lot of the
Even
times,
did you say? Did you say? What did you say about Judas?
no, the half brother of Yahusha, Jude, his
No,
actual name
I heard.
is
I heard that. You said something before
Judas.
about Judas.
Yeah, Judas had the same name as Jude, and
Yeah.
the tribe of Yehuda.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you look into the Hebrew, it would have been the same exact name. The Greek translates Judah as Judas. Even when you look at the ancestor Judah, if you have a Septuagint, it will say Judas. So it's literally the same name. So there somehow in the Greek the S goes there instead of H. I don't know if there was I people tell me that Greek now doesn't have a hey sound or an H sound, and that seems to be the problem with certain names. But I don't know if that's true.
People that I've talked to certain people that don't necessarily fluently speak Greek, but they speak it a little bit. And supposedly, when you have the S at the end of a name, at the end of a male's name, a lot of the times it's not pronounced. The S is placed there as a marker indicating that it's a male's name. So you wouldn't even pronounce it as Judas, you would pronounce it just as Jude. Judah. The same thing with how you have Jesus, right? Or Jesus. The S at the end wouldn't be pronounced. It would be Yesu or Yeshu, you know, literally pointing to the fact that they took the Yeshu, the acronym for.
Interesting.
And you
But,
actually still have some people that pronounce it that way in certain parts of the world, in certain Middle Eastern countries. Instead of saying Jesus, they say Yesu.
Interesting. Yeah, that's what I remember when first coming into Torah and really going into the names is that you're gonna come across people with the same names. Hanuk's another one. I forget how many people in Scripture have the name Hanuk, which in English is mistranslated as Enoch. There, I think you got a descendant of one of the 12 tribes that's named Hanuk. You have Hanuk, son of Seth, which is where the Book of Enoch comes from. You have the Hanuk of Cain. So there's at least 3 Hanuks in Scripture. So it's very common for them to like recycle names. It's very common. It's very, very common. We're the only people that like feel the need to have like names that are different from one another, and like that's more of like a westernized thing, is to like you want your child not to have the same name as someone else's child and this and that. But in the Hebrew culture, they looked at it as these are ancestral family names that are passed down, which we still somewhat do today, but it's more or less a father giving a son his first name. And but you won't see it like as common as the Hebrew culture. It's like every there's like multiple people with the same names in the Hebrew culture. So that was very common. I'm trying to think of other ones I can think of. Abiathar and Eleazar. Multiple people in Scripture had those names. Eleazar was very common. What was Elizabeth's Hebrew name?
Elishaba.
Elishaba was definitely used by multiple people in Scripture. So you go through like each and every Hebrew name. It was very common for even different families and different tribes to have the same name. So like you didn't even have to be of the same tribe to have similar names or the same name. So it's like Western culture just we don't get it. We don't get stuff like that. So, but that's very common in the scriptures. It's very common.
Dog.
Uh-oh. Sounds like one of those little chihuahuas.
Oh no, that dog sounds big.
All right, so let's see here. We're at the last chapter here. Now, was there anything else important really about chapter 4? So these are kind of like all of Solomon's leaders, his priests, his soldiers. I find it interesting, though, they mentioned the hill country of Ephraim. That's got to be of some importance.
That's where Elizabeth and Zechariah lived, it says.
Yeah.
In the hill country of Ephraim.
What I find interesting is that Solomon's daughters married his, basically his men. Like, you had certain of Solomon's men that married his daughters, so you had some of them being even in-laws to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So, now this is interesting. Verse 28 of 3, I never noticed this before. From my net Septuagint, it says, and all Yashar heard this right ruling that the king rightly ruled. They stood in awe from before the king because they perceived that divine discernment was in him to execute right ruling. I would say instead of divine, I would use the word Yali discernment, or discernment that comes from Yahuwah. Probably would be better terminology, but same concept. So they understood that basically his judgment came from the Most High, is what it's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they were in awe of him. So let's see here. We should have a new reader for chapter 5. Let's see here. What's weird for me here is they seem to have difference in verse numberings in chapter 5. It's weird. Because my net here, just to show you guys what I'm talking about here, my net Septuagint, let me see if there's a way to put this shared screen on this. Let me see here. Or possibly I could do this. You can see here, like in chapter 5, it kind of, next to certain verse numberings, it's giving, or like, it will say verse 9, but then in parentheses, it says 4 verse 29. So it's very weird. I don't know if it's trying to tell me that the Masoretic, in the Masoretic, that'd be 4 verse 29. I'm like trying to figure this out here. Yeah, I think that's what it's trying to say. It's very weird. Okay. All right. 60 cores. Some of the measurements in here are like, I wonder if they were not trying to transliterate. They were trying to keep the original word in there, because it talks about 60 cores, Kors. I think that's either Greek or Hebrew there they're trying to keep in there. I noticed that the net does that a lot. They don't like to translate stuff that doesn't have an equivalent in English. Huh. Anyway. All right, so you read, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
I've read a little bit. Let me see here. I know Sister Shoshana.
She can't read.
She can't read, right?
No, she's still
real sick.
problems.
Okay. All right. Brother Yahusha, would you like to finish us off in chapter 5?
Sure.
Let's try to get the screen up here.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Chapter 5. And Haram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to anoint Shalimah in the place of Dud, his father, because Haram always loved Dud. And Shalimah sent to Haram, saying, You knew my father Dud, that he could not build a house to the name of Yahweh my Elohim, because of the wars that compassed him about, until Yahweh put them under the soles of his feet. And now Yahweh, my Elohim, has given me rest round about. There is no one plotting against, and there is no evil trespass. And behold, I intend to build a house to the name of Yahweh my Elohim, as Yahweh Elohim spoke to my Abba Dud, saying, Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, he shall build a house for my name. And now command and let men cut wood for me out of Lebanon. And behold, my servants shall be with your servants, and I will give you the wages of your service, according to all that you shall say, because you know that we have no one skilled in cutting timber like the Sidonians. And it came to pass as soon as Hiram heard the words of Shalimah, that he rejoiced greatly and said, Baruch be Yahweh this day, who has given to Dud a wise son over this numerous people. And he sent to Shalimah, saying, I have listened concerning all that you have sent to me, for I will do all your will. As for timber of cedar and fir, my servant shall bring them down from Lebanon to the sea. I will form them into rafts and bring them to the place which you shall send to me about. And I will land them there, and you shall take them up, and you shall do my will in giving bread to my household. So Haram gave to Shalimah cedars and fir trees and all his desire. And Shalimah gave to Haram 20,000 measures of wheat as food for his house, and 20,000 baths of beaten oil. Thus Shalimah gave to Haram yearly. And Yahweh gave Hakmah to Shalimah as he promised him. And there was shalom between Haram and Shalimah, and they made a covenant between them. And the king raised a levy out of all Yashrael, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 taking turn every month. They were a month in Lebanon and 2 months at home, and Adoniram was over the levy. And Shalimah had 17,000 bearers of burdens, and 80,000 hewers of stone in the mountain. Besides the rulers that were appointed over the works of Shalimah, there were 3,600 masters who wrought in the works. And they prepared the stones and the timber 3 years. The Masoretic doesn't seem to have anything about it being for 3 years. Just as the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and hewed stones to lay the foundation of the house. And Shalimah builders and Haram's builders did hew them, and the stones corers, so they prepared timber and stones to build the house.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. I think it's interesting. Now, Hiram was not an Israelite, right?
He was, but technically, he would be considered almost like a grafted in.
Oh, all right. Okay.
His mother was a Naphthalite.
Okay.
And his dad was, I think, a Sidonian or a Phoenician. If I remember correctly.
That makes sense then.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So, by the way, this kind of makes sense why the Phoenician language is a what would not proto, but what you would call late paleo.
Oh.
Let me see here. I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. I was talking about this last night on our study. That just because something is in the Paleo or Phoenician language doesn't mean it's scripture. Phoenician language. I'll show you guys how similar it is. I'm not saying it's exact to the original Paleo, but it's similar. Like what we really call the Paleo today, what we have of it is a lot of it comes from the Phoenician language. To get an idea of what the pronunciations would have been and all that. Let's see here. So here's the Phoenician here. You can see how close it is. Right? See, this is how we get the ta and all that. So it's very similar. And I could see this happening if Hiram was a grafted in Hebrew. He possibly could have had part in them passing down a version of the Hebrew language to their people. So you got Lamed, Mem, all this here. That's what Phoenician looks like. And so Ta, right there. What's interesting is they have the Ta looks a lot like the other T type of letter. It's kind of interesting. They're like two similar letters. Trying to see if I can find the Aleph here. That would be the Aleph right there, the first one there. It's very similar. I'm not saying it's exact to the Paleo, but it's pretty similar. It's pretty similar to it. So the there's a lot of ancient stone writings that use this type of language. Yeah. So we got Aleph. So anyway, but what people call today, like what we have of the Paleo, really is the Phoenician. It's a late version of the Paleo Hebrew text. So it's like I could compare the Phoenician to like the Samaritan script would have been very similar to the Phoenician. So that's pretty much what they had prior to them going full on Aramaic box script and replacing the Paleo with that. The latest stage of the Paleo that we have today is really the Phoenician language and the Samaritan script, which is known as Samaritan Hebrew. So anyway. I'm trying to think here if I could find for you guys what it looks like. The Samaritan Hebrew. I just found out recently that it looks like there's a link between the Arabic people and the Samaritans. I can't preach it as doctrine, but it seems like there are links to them being the Samaritans, like the Palestinians. And because it seems like the latest stage of the Samaritan language is what's called Samaritan Arabic. Let me see if I can find here Samaritan Hebrew language. See if I can find a link for this here. Here we go. So this is like kind of example here. This is how you pronounce Abri in Samaritan Ibrit. So a lot of like the phonetical changes, I think what happened is the later you got into the Paleo Hebrew version of the Paleo Hebrew, eventually other languages had influence on the later Hebrew. Like obviously Ibrit is not how you would pronounce it in the Paleo, it would be Abri. So you already see like vowel points being a factor. As you can see here on the table here, this is like some of what their Samaritan language would look like. Then it talks about the language family. This is interesting. They admit this, that the origin of it is African Asiatic. It's ironic they are admitting this on Wikipedia. Um, let's see here. So it says here, Samaritan's ancient Hebrew ceased to be a spoken everyday language and was succeeded by Samaritan Aramaic, which itself ceased to be a spoken language sometime between the 10th or 12th centuries. So that would be talking about what, like 1200 AD or 1300 AD, and was succeeded by Arabic, or more specifically, Samaritan Palestinian Arabic. So this is what kind of led me to possibly accepting that the Palestinians today are descendants of the Samaritans. And, which goes into a whole nother topic, why they possibly were kicked out of the land in 1947. Is that Satan would not want, descendants of Yahuwah's original people in that land for him to do his deception.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes into a whole nother topic of conspiracy theories there. Why exactly the Palestinians are demonized, why exactly, Arabics in general are demonized.
I wonder if they could be I wonder if they could be a mix, though, because I know, like, historically we can point to some of Yehuda fleeing to Arabic countries. So some of Yehuda did live in Arabic countries and then would have converted to Islam eventually. And then we know that Torah says that there shall never cease to be poor from the land. So then you also have the poor that remained in the land even in 70 AD, that I believe were also converted to were forced to convert to Islam when the Arabics took over the land, whenever that was. So you have like different conversions during different points in times and different places. So I wonder if it could be if they could be a mixture of actual Yahudi and then Samaritans of the southern house or the northern house?
Yeah. Well, the Samaritans were actually of the northern house. The theory is that you had some Assyrians that were placed into the land from Sennacherib that intermarried with northern tribes. So that would be the.
I get the two houses mixed up of which one's Yehuda and which one's Yashral. But I wonder if if they could be both. You have Yehuda converting to Islam, and then you have the Samaritans converting to Islam, which could actually be like a forerunner fulfillment of the prophecy of the two sticks. Because if you have these Palestinians that are both northern house and southern house come together and they don't even know it, then you have that's basically the two sticks like come together, but they haven't come back, and they haven't been grafted back in yet.
Yeah. And this link I have here from Wikipedia, in their own words, this is their claim, not mine. Ancestrally, Samaritan Jews affirm that they descend from the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh in ancient Samaria. So that's not my opinion, that's their opinion. So there's even traditions orally today where their lineage comes from. But these people are the same people, by the way, that read from the Samaritan Pentateuch. They have a very interesting. They're very close to Orthodox Judaism. Their religious practices are very close. I would say they're on a more Sadducean, probably theology, where like no outside information, no rabbinical traditions, no man-made stuff. what's very important to them is that they believe, just like the woman at the well believed, that they're supposed to worship at Mount Gerizim. They even have it in their Samaritan Torah, a verse that differs from the Masoretic and the Septuagint that says you were supposed to make an altar on Mount Gerizim. So there's that's a big part of their religious practice as well. According to this, it says the Samaritan population shrank significantly in the wake of the Samaritan revolts, which were brutally suppressed by the Byzantine Empire. Oh, what do you know? The same story and over again. Esau comes in over and over again. Esau, he's got to try to kill off Yahuwah's people. So you got constantly. And by the way, how do I know it's Esau? If you go and research the finding of Rome, even the finding of Rome goes back to Romulus and Remus. According to Jewish tradition, oral tradition, Romulus and Remus, the actual person that found Rome was Edomite. So it goes back to even Yahudi tradition about that. So the Byzantine Empire would have been the Edomite leg of the Roman Empire. And so it's talking about how they were oppressed by the Byzantines in this article. So it's very interesting how it just recycles over and over again. They're constantly getting attacked from the same people. So I just find that interesting. They're even if you look at what they look like, they don't look like an Ashkenazi. They, you could tell just by their appearance that they're of Arabic type of, especially the modern Samaritans today. They're very Arabic looking. Trying to see if I can find a decent picture. I know there's one of these links here should show one of their priests holding up a scroll. You know what? Hold on. Let me refine my search. I think it's under the article Samaritan Pentateuch. Yeah. So the only thing that I really have an issue with well, there's a lot of issues I have with what they believe, obviously, but the major issue is they think that they have the only legitimate Torah. They have a weird belief system like those from the Dead Sea Scrolls that the Torah we have today was corrupted by Ezra and all that. Like they believe they have the original Torah. So it's similar to those out there that, get into the book of Jubilees and they're like, Doug, we gotta trust Jubilees because the Bible has been corrupted. And this and that. So it's of like the same like legend thing where supposedly the Torah we have now is not Masha's Torah and all that, conspiracy theory type of stuff. But but here you go. Here's what a Samaritan would look like, and this is supposedly their original Samaritan Pentateuch. What it looks like with the Samaritan script. So it talks about the variances, multiple variances, multiple. It even mentions in this paragraph here that the majority of the differences it has with the Masoretic text, it shares with the Septuagint, and some are shared with the Latin Vulgate. So it mentions that in this article. So anyone's interested, I could leave you guys links to this stuff here. This little side topic I felt led to share. So, but it's very interesting. I think that's why, like, a lot of us were not dogmatic about the pronunciations in the Paleo Hebrew today. Like, I'm not that dogmatic to the point if someone says Yahweh, I'm not gonna cut them off and be mean about it. Like, because quite frankly, we're doing our best with consonants. Like Rob Skibo would always say, like, we're doing our best to figure out what it would have been because we don't have the original Paleo today. We just don't, it became a lost language at some point in Israel. They stopped speaking it at a certain point. So, I mean, historically, we know that for a fact. That's why Aramaic was so big. around the time of Messiah, because really, I would say they were still somewhat speaking Hebrew, but like in everyday speaking, because you had so many Gentiles coming in back and forth, Aramaic and Greek were the more popular ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just historically proven that they were speaking a lot of Aramaic, a lot of Greek. One of the reasons is if you look at the story of Daniel, right, with the writing of the wall, Daniel was the only one that could read that.
That's right.
So I believe Yahusha, the hand of Yahuwah, wrote in Paleo Hebrew on that wall.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel was the only one that could read it.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows that, like, even in, like, what would that have been, Mom? 400 BC, 500 BC, about when that would have happened?
Like, middle of 500.
So middle 500 BC's already Paleo Hebrew was becoming a lost language.
Right.
You know, fast forward a couple of hundred years later with Ezra and Nehemiah,
Mm-hmm.
not many of them would have been speaking Hebrew still. So,
mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of Jewish tradition puts the orally, the Targums originated orally in the synagogue period, the early synagogue period, you know, after they came back from Babylon, that they orally passed it down as a translation, oral translation of the scriptures in Aramaic, so that the common people that didn't know Hebrew, they could understand the scriptures, because a lot of them forgot the Paleo, and they're like, okay, what does this mean? And so that's just kind of historically, and I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they didn't speak Hebrew at all anymore, but it became less and less used over time. And it got to the point where it almost became a dead language by the time you get to the Middle Ages. No one was speaking, Paleo Hebrew anymore. You had the box script, which came from the Aramaic. Like what we call modern Hebrew today is pretty much Aramaic. Like modern Aramaic is what it is. So Aramaic became very big in the land, but I would say the modern Hebrew too is not even pure Aramaic anymore. It's it would be modern Aramaic box script with also German influence and Yiddish influence. So it's really a hybrid type of language that most Jewish people speak today. It's not really like fully Aramaic. Because if it was, for example, they would not be saying Eloah. They would be saying Aloah or Alua. You know what I'm saying? If it was really Aramaic, just Aramaic, pure Aramaic, they would not be saying Moshe. They would be saying Musha. In the Aramaic, it's Musha. Musha is his name. So as far as the spelling and pronunciation goes, it's not fully Aramaic. So, but anyway, end of my little language rant there. But just saying that, so it is important though that we should be praising Yahuwah that we have something like the Phoenician language, because it's a link back to the original Hebrew. You know, the Samaritan is a link back to the original Hebrew. The Samaritan Hebrew, which is a dead language at this point too. I don't think that's even spoken anymore, the Samaritan Hebrew. But anyway, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this study today, and Yahuwah willing, see you guys next time. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. See ya.
Shabbat Shalom.